Hello, how is everyone doing today? My name is Sabrina Victoria, and this is her version. It is Monday morning. I certainly hope everyone had a fantastic weekend. So today I have a wonderful woman with me joining and here to talk about her story. Her name is Sharmon. She has an amazing story of strength and hope after escaping two back-to-back narcissistic relationships. She is an amazing mother of five who loves to travel, loves the community of positive people she is now surrounding herself with, and is here to shed some real good, wholesome light on learning to take two steps back and humble yourself in order to really find true happiness in life. Now, I want to start out by saying that our conversation that we had was absolutely amazing. I literally felt such a connection with you. I love your zest for life. I love your positivity. Seeing you come from what you came from and then still having so much life in you just really gives me so much hope for other females out there who feel, you know, um, just so bogged down with so much stuff and feeling as if there's no way out and they're never going to be the same.
Yeah.
So I really, really appreciate seeing that from you. How was your weekend?
It was great. Had friends over and we just had a girls' weekend and yep.
I love that. I love that. So your story is very much like so many I hear, where you actually linked up with two men back to back, which I hear constantly all the time, and I'm sure you do too. Both had high narcissistic traits. Can you give me just kind of like a breakdown, just so people listening kind of have an idea of your background and kind of what you went through?
Well, the first marriage, I was 18, so that was kind of a escape from home. And, I was really young and idealistic and sort of, like got into the romance of it. He was like, very romantic and fit into, the rom-com movies that you love, kind of a thing in the beginning and stuff. And then in the marriage, he was more like verbally and emotionally and abusive. But I was raised in a really like Christian home, and you didn't do divorce. That was really bad. So like it was just so I was with him for 10 years. And it was when my older son, he was about 6 or 7 or 8, and started, I think what really woke me up was seeing him mimic his dad and being really disrespectful, because the dad would undermine me, as far as like if I was disciplining the kids or, and parenting the kids, he would undermine, things I did, and was like kind of teaching disrespect. And and he had like a disrespect for women in general that was like coming. I saw it in my son, and I was like, by staying, I'm teaching my 3 boys that's okay. Exactly. So that gave me the fire to get out of that relationship. But I was young and I had 3 young kids, and I was scared of how I was making on my own, and I was like trying to find my feet from getting out of that situation. And then the second husband like rode in on a night on a white horse and said all the right things, and he seemed to understand what I was going through, because he had been through a divorce and he had 2 young girls, and I didn't know, that they were narcissists or anything like that. But knowing what I do now and looking back, you can see the pattern. I can see the exact traits that I've read about that were there. The love bombing, the like getting, they seem to listen to you and your dreams and what you want, and then they offer that to you on a silver platter. But it's all words. Actions, it never comes true.
Yeah. That's what's so crazy about it is just how similar It's almost like they're cut from the same cloth, you know?
That's what blows. I was watching the podcast you did yesterday with the girl and her story. Like it's like they're all cut from the same cloth. It's mind boggling how they have the same traits, the same things.
Yeah. And it's almost like you wonder, are they brothers? Like, are these guys brothers? But
Yeah.
they're all, you know, they're all over the place. And a lot of it is just recognizing the red flags before, hopefully beforehand, or before too much time has gone by. And, you know, being able to, whatever the answer is for you, you know, leaving, not leaving, whatever it is, but just allowing yourself to get educated in how to deal with it. Because a lot of girls don't necessarily feel comfortable at this exact point leaving, which I'm sure you've heard that 100 times over. They have to do it in their own time, but at least, you know, being educated in what it is helps tremendously, because that kind of takes the weight off of you as far as knowing whether or feeling as if everything's your fault, because they have
Right.
you believing that everything's your fault.
Yeah. And that's how it starts. You try, or that's how I started was, well, in my mind, it was with the second husband, it was alcoholism, you know, like I didn't grow up with parents who drank because they were like very religious, you know, we didn't drink and stuff. So I didn't grow up with that. So my first experience was when he would drink, it would get really dark. So like I thought, I blamed it all on the drinking. If he would just stop the drinking, then we would be happy and everything would be okay. So in my mind, so then that's how I started searching, like how, because, you know, it takes two people to make things work or whatever. So like I had to own my responsibility in this. And I was like thinking, but I'm just doing everything right. Like we are happy because I'm walking on eggshells, or I'm making sure, you know, I learn what he likes or doesn't like, and make sure everything stays peaceful or something. If I were to say what I really felt or speak my mind or something, like I know that it wouldn't be peaceful. So like I don't understand how I'm half responsible for this. But then I realized it was by educating myself and learning that my power is on how I react. Like I learned, like for one example, I was kind of like afraid of the first husband. So like standing up to him wasn't a thing. But the second one would get in my head and like twist things. And I remember how I would think of it and like try to explain it. Like if I was talking to my sister and trying to explain an argument, it was like being in a fun house mirror, like walking through one of those mirror things where what you see is being mirrored back to you, and it's all distorted and not what you're trying to communicate at all. And you can't, it's like hitting your head against the wall. You can't get through. And I remember feeling like that. And I remember one time early on in the marriage, like in my head, he was doing that. He was like twisting things I said, and just like, it was like he was in my head, and nothing I was like trying to communicate was being heard, you know, correctly or anything. And it was just, and more, he was like an accusatory thing, blaming or whatever. And I remember in my head thinking like, I would have tolerated it. I wouldn't have fought back in the first marriage. And I'm not going to let some guy tell me what I'm thinking or whatever. And so I fought back, and I had this experience where like I literally scared myself. As I remember, it was like an outer body experience, like watching myself. And I just yelled back at him, like, that's not true. And I just got so angry because I wasn't going to let somebody do that. And I'm pretty sure, and I smacked him in the face. And that was the first time I have ever done that. And it horrified myself.
Yeah.
But I remember in that moment, something changed in him, and he turned, and he like, it was almost like he was laughing, like he was amused, and he was like, oh, this is husband abuse. I can call the police and have you arrested. And like, and I realized that everything that he was doing to that moment, he wanted that. He wanted my reaction, and he had won. And before I knew anything about a narcissism, I realized that reacting that way wasn't going to work. Mm-hmm. Crying and being emotional wasn't going to work. Like you had to know emotion. And so I learned that gray rock before I ever heard that term, that was the best way to handle his, you know, picking fights or whatever, was just to not react.
Yeah.
which was a really hard skill.
Yeah. That's reminding me of an experience, several with me, but did you feel as if you were trying like every way possible, like trying to be really mature and then trying to cry and then trying to yelling? Like
Yeah.
you're almost like did you do that?
Yeah, like if you would cry, get emotional, like because they're in the fight, it was like that's what he wanted was you to be sad or whatever. So yeah, you were like just trying, and a lot of times trying to get to stop. And I've heard where like some people are like they asking the question, do they not let you sleep? And I remember him coming home late and waking me up and like, you know, disrupting sleep and just like all of those things that I didn't realize. You know, I blamed it on the drinking. Like he doesn't, and that was kind of an excuse I gave him. Like he came home, he had been drinking, he doesn't know what he's doing, kind of a thing. And I didn't realize these are like tactics or things that they do to keep you, you know, unbalanced, I guess. Yeah.
And you know, mine used alcohol and mine used the no sleep. You know, he would keep me up until 4 in the morning because he kind of just did, owned, a, not owned a business. He owned a business and I worked for him. But I ran the business, the entire thing. So he could sleep in until 1 or 2 in the afternoon, but I had to get up. First of all, I had a son and I had to be up for the business for phone calls and emails and all the stuff that had to get done in the morning. But he would keep me up sometimes, not sometimes, all the time until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I was literally running on 4 hours of sleep consistently over like 12 or 13 years. And I think that's what it is. You know, they like you being halfway like out of your mind.
Yeah.
You know, crazy. I I really want you to share how your second marriage went as far as the quickness of it and when you like the moment you knew it was a mistake that you were doing it again.
Um, so we met in September of 2001, and and then we moved in together. And I remember like that was the first step. It was like no, I think it was November, the beginning of November. So like so fast. And I remember like each thing because I was, you know, going through the divorce and like had all this other stuff going on. And I remember, and he presented this, like, you know, I'll help you through it. And like kind of the safe zone and like, and all the, you know, kind of the understanding and stuff. So we moved in together, but I remember even that step, I was just like, I just got divorced. I don't know about this. And it would be like, well, then it would kind of get reverse psychology. So I felt like all those steps I was pushed into was like a proof of, is this real? Like, do you really love me? Or like, is this really like kind of meant to be? And if you, and I also got thrown of like time, you know, when it's real, when you really love somebody, time doesn't matter, like, you know, and doing things in the right time. And the first, even though I was really young, like I met my first husband when I was 17, you know, we were together almost 2 years, you know, before we got married, kind of, you know, so I felt like I was doing things in this proper order. So in my mind, it was like, well, that didn't work out. So I kind of like let myself believe that, right, timing doesn't, you know, doing everything this proper length of time doesn't matter. So we moved in together. He asked me to marry him in January. And then we started planning the wedding and we got married in April. And up until then, looking back, there were some, you know, like red flags, like that I know now with the education. But at the time, it was enough where you can make excuses for him. You know, like everybody has a bad day, or you know, and you kind of just brush it off. But when I really knew was that we got married, and so he had a lot of family from up north that came down because we lived in Florida. And so it was like 24 hours after the wedding, we all went out. so that they could play pool. The guys could play pool and everything, but I was already pregnant with our daughter. So I wasn't drinking, and I was just sitting and talking with his sister and everything. And I remember looking over and like trying to make eye contact with him or whatever. And I remember getting this feeling like that something was wrong. Like he wasn't, he wasn't getting, I wasn't getting the good vibes back. And I was like getting this feeling like that he was upset. And I was like, and then all I could think about was like, well, what did I do? Did I offend him? Like, what's going on? And just this gut feeling that something wasn't right. And
And this is like at the
wedding. No, this is the day after the wedding. So
the day after the wedding.
Reception. That all was great. And, all our closest loved ones were there. It was like a smallish thing. This was like just with his family who came out of town. We stayed an extra day to like entertain them and do things with them. And they were all leaving, and then we were going to leave for the honeymoon the next day. So we kind of like delayed everything. So we all walk out to the car, and I go directly to the driver's, to drive. And he went to get in the car to drive. And his uncle, who had been in a very serious car accident before, involving a drunk driver, won't drive with anybody who's been drinking. Like, so his uncle was just like, let Sharmon drive. And I was like, yeah, that's the right. Like, it didn't make it, like, yeah, why I drive? I haven't been drinking. And I guess the negative tone, like I knew he had been drinking enough where he switched over to the dark side. So I knew he had drinking, like I should be driving. And he got really mad, and he started yelling at me, and he was saying things like insinuating that I had a thing with his uncle, and just like turning it, like lashing out. And I just remember standing there being really embarrassed and also shocked at, like what he was saying and accusing me of, and like, and how he was reacting so harshly over something that made perfect sense to me. So he stormed off, and he went and got a ride with one of his other family members, and we all went back to the apartment. And I remember all his family was there, and I came in first. He still hadn't gotten back there. So I remember his brother and his mom was there, and his sister. And I remember he finally came storming into the house, and he just immediately starts yelling at me, and like, how could I have like humiliated him like that? And like, and just like really accusatory and stuff. And he took off his wedding ring and he threw it at me. And I remember just feeling like so shocked that we're having this huge blow up, this huge reaction over something that made sense, like no drinking something that was responsible, right? And then I remember he stormed out, and I remember feeling so embarrassed, and like just like it almost like I couldn't believe it was happening at all. And I remember going to my room and shutting the door, and he left. I don't know where he went that whole night. He might have went to his brother's or something. And I just remember crying literally all night. And there I was pregnant. I just had this wedding with my closest family and friends, which basically, like telling the story, like that we were going to have, I had a second chance. It's beautiful, like, happily ever after, only it wasn't. And I knew that if that happened then, it could happen again. And like, what did I do? And like, and what do I do? Mm-hmm. And I guess in my mind, I was embarrassed about being, I imagined myself calling my mom or telling everybody, that I made a bad mistake, and taking the steps to like, maybe move in with my mom, or, steps of breaking this up. And because I guess like when you get into a relationship, you kind of like, you paint this whole like future. So it's like really hard to take that apart, and I couldn't imagine like, what was I going to do next? I didn't know. And I made a decision that I was going to make it work, or
try at least.
Try. Yep. I was going to. Yep.
I totally get it. You had talked to me about how you felt guilt towards the second divorce. Is that because it was your second, or was there like other reasons why you kind of felt extra
I
guilt?
think I felt guilty because through the first divorce and dealing with the three kids through that, and we had shared custody and the back and forth and stuff like that, it made me, it was hard. It was a hard, and also it didn't help that my oldest didn't, and it's funny because I didn't know, but looking back, he had this instinct, and I always thought it was because he was my oldest, and he was my oldest son, and he's protective of his mom. So, and he would have that mindset, like, I don't need another dad. So he never got along with the second husband. There was just something there. He didn't like him. And I always, so like going through the first and helping them adjust to this new life and all of that was really hard. And I always felt, you just feel bad for breaking up their family, because when you create a family, that you do not want, you want the happy parents and the whole thing. That's your dream. And so I didn't want to do that again to the second two, like I felt so bad. And also I got close with my stepdaughters. And so they had been through a divorce also. And like, I felt like I was showing, like, by getting a second divorce, by this not working out, like I'm showing all the kids, like, you can't believe in marriage, like I felt that I was taking something away from them. Like, that hope that there are happy homes.
Yeah. I could see how that would be super heavy. And I think that women, or just people in general, sometimes they take a lot of ownership for situations. And, in situations like this, at this time, you didn't even know about narcissism, right? You still had no idea.
Nope.
Yeah. So you still were taking ownership of everything because you didn't realize that it's actually an entirely different, more species of human that you're dealing with.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought if I could just learn, because I thought it was more alcoholism or that, if I could learn how to not, like, I learned about codependency, and I was like, well, maybe that's me. So if I can change myself in some way, it will change him. It'll change our situation. Like, the only person I can control is me. Like, I came to that conclusion that the only thing I can change is me. And how can I change? What skills do I need or whatever to do that? And then that's in that process is how I learned about narcissism.
Got it. That makes sense. Did you learn about narcissism before you got divorced?
The second time, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
That
was
in
the middle there.
Towards the end.
Okay.
Well, I guess it was 2014. It was like my 40th birthday. My sister tried to throw me a surprise birthday party. And I walked into the restaurant and I saw it was mostly his family. My sister invited some of her friends that I know and am friendly with. And it was the family that I worked for 11 years that I nannied for. But I always kept business and pleasure separate with them. So when I saw them in the restaurant, it kind of like threw me, because it's like, I don't socialize with them. It was a business relationship, like I help you with your kids. Like we raise your kids kind of a thing. Like, we don't hang out. And, and I was like really thrown. And later my sister said, like, when I went to go plan this party, you don't have any friends. And I had moved up here as a second to Pennsylvania from Naples to start over, like the second chance. We had gone through, like, I was leaving, like he moved up here because he had sold his business and things. It was like in 2007 when the financial crisis thing happened, and he had sold his business and moved up here. And so at that time I wasn't going to move because I had shared custody with my boys, and I was not leaving Florida, I was not leaving them. And then he said all the right things, and he got to me, and I was like, yeah, I need to give this, a good fighting chance for the younger two. And so I ended up here, and being here, this is where he grew up. So it was all his friends, a lot of his family live here. And I didn't realize until that moment, that party, that I was purposely keeping people out, because I didn't want anybody to see my reality. And because once we lived here, it was like it was his friends and a lot, and the drinking thing was an issue. Like if we had a birthday party for our child, like there was this big drinking was a part of it, and that always led to like he would get really paranoia, and he would say things and get confrontational and stuff. So like I was always like trying to keep those situations from happening. So it was at my birthday where it really like hit me that I was so isolated. I had isolated myself, and that like, because I met moms and stuff through the kids' school and stuff like that, but I would keep everything kind of casual and like not let anybody close to me. And we had these really amazing neighbors that lived right next door to us. And I remember when we moved in there and into the house, they were like, "Oh my gosh, there's like 5 kids." And we would chat, but I would always like it was like, "Hi," and like really keep them separate. And they had asked, because my second husband was really good with building things and stuff, and so they'd asked him with help at this project they wanted to do. So he initiated the friendship, and they became really good friends. So we all became good friends. And it was also Janet. She grew up with a very an alcoholic father or whatever, and they were all sitting and we were sitting in the driveway and having drinks and like talking or whatever, and she saw the change come over Ron, where he didn't get a joke, like he kind of like took it serious and all that, and she like nudged her partner, and she was just like, stop, and later she came to me and she was like, "Does he hit you?" And like, because she had just seen us change and she didn't realize, so she confronted me and was like, and that was another like, somebody else sees this, because up to that point I felt like I was the only one who sees this other side of him and nobody else sees. So how do I explain this? Because other times I would try to explain and nobody would see it. I was like I was overreacting, or I was the one who was putting things, making a big thing out of nothing, maybe overreacting or something. So that was that all happened around the same time span. It was like somebody reached out and was like, "Are you okay? Something's going on." And so that I told her, "No, he doesn't hit me," but and I opened up to her. And so like having that support, and then my sister came to stay with us around the same time. And so she saw it because she lived with us for a summer, and she saw it. And my sister's very strong. Like she's going to stand up and speak her mind, so they had some friction, and like defending me. So seeing her, and then my brother like tried to help him out in a business venture and like kind of saw these traits. They didn't realize they were narcissistic traits, but like the fact that he could never be wrong. And so like it's so hard to work with somebody like that. So then they kind of reached out to me, like, so the support started coming in of other people, and that really gave me the strength. It made me look at things differently, and like, I don't know, like the reality, it made me start to instead of like looking for the positives and trying to make something work, because I tend to have the skill of every day of finding something to be grateful for and positive and staying that. I think it's a gift, but also it can make you tolerate things you shouldn't for way too long. And so then I came across that book, and where I learned about narcissism, and that was my ticket. That was like, there's nothing I can change in myself that's going to fix this. I can't, like, that was where it changed. It was like somebody gave me a gift and said, this is your reality. You have to accept your reality and your truth. And now you have to save yourself. That's the only thing you can do, is whatever steps to save yourself and get out of that, because he'll never change, because he won't accept that he has any responsibility for anything. Like, it's not a normal relationship where you can talk about your problems and work out a solution.
Yeah.
And that was my that was that moment. The light bulb moment was when I read the chapter on narcissism. I was like, it was huge.
I bet. I can only imagine. I really felt when you mentioned that woman who like caught that glimpse from him. And more than likely she's an empath, because empaths they can read facial expressions more than anybody else. I can't even imagine like what a relief that must have been for you to have her confront you. I'm just like putting myself in your shoes. I was almost overwhelmed with like emotion when you said that, because
because the thing about narcissism is that they have a mask. There's two personalities. Like, that's how I think about it, is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like, there's the public. Like, I worked with them in a business, like you did. I ran the office and the phone calls and emails and all of that. And I would go with them sometimes to job sites, and I knew the customers, and everybody loved him. And I saw this charming side. Like, I felt like I was the only one, that or his first ex-wife. She would be the only other one in the world who would know the truth. I felt like there was this truth that I was the only one. And how do I like rescue myself when everybody's like, what are you doing? Why are you leaving him? You're so lucky you have all this, this great house, this great life. Like,
that's what they do.
Yeah.
So I have a question. When you left your house with your parents, you moved in with your first husband.
Yep.
Then you guys were going through a divorce. Was there a section of time where you were on your own, or did you pretty much go from like one husband to the next husband? Because it happened so fast.
Yeah, it was like one husband to the next husband. So we were separated, but we owned our house, and he was going to buy me out of it, and that was going to be my money to go get my own place. Either that, I was moving with my mom, who I didn't want to, because my stepdad didn't really care for kids. And so like, I really didn't want to do that as the in between. So like, I was kind of like sleeping on the couch and like, working on, I was going through this whole process to get a job at the hospital as a floor secretary. So I had gone through like, I was waiting to hear back and getting accepted to that job, and waiting to, for the money, to buy me out of the condo. So like in that time is when I met Ron, and he was like, oh, you could work for me, you could run the business. And it was just like that whole dream. I can like still be with the kids. I can work from home and do the office stuff. Like, it was like this dream of like, I could have the best of both worlds. And it was like, yeah.
Got it. So when you finally decided to leave your second husband, it was pretty much the first time that you were going to have to move out on your own.
Yep.
With 5 kids, or
4. Oh, well, 3.
3
kids. The one he was moving to Philly the same summer. He had graduated from high school and was moving. He was in college. He might have been a year into college, but I remember he was moving to the city. So he was moving out. So it would just be the 3, 2 boys and a girl.
So how was that mentally for you, as far as going from like a home with your kids to then going to, where did you go?
To an apartment.
Females deal with, they're in a home and they look good, and then the nervousness of the transition of, where did you transition?
Well, to be able to leave, I think you have to, you like accept your truth of your reality, and then you start taking the steps of that. And I remember the fear of having to live in a woman's shelter to like actually leave. I remember for months working out a budget, how much money I was going to need to make. and playing with numbers and coming to the conclusion, like, there's no way I can support these kids. I'm gonna be living in a car, or like, how am I gonna get out? And I think I ran the business. I dealt with the accountant, the tax refunds would come in. And I was trying to think of when I got my own bank account and how that came to be. And I can't remember like what the reason was, but like that was like the first step. And then also I didn't have a car. Like we would have a lot of times we'd only have one car because, I didn't need a car. I worked from home, kind of a thing, and so for a lot of the time we'd have one car. And so I didn't have a car. And like around that time, my son started driving, and my mother-in-law was like, oh, my neighbor has this Volkswagen, this little black Volkswagen and she was thinking more for my son. And I was like, oh my God, I've always loved Volkswagens. So like, because I love the movie Herbie and everything. And I've just always loved Volkswagen. So I was like, I want that car. And of course my son was like, I am not driving that car. No, thank you. So I got this amazing car. Like I got it for $3,000. It was a 2001 and it had like 21,000 miles on it. Like it was, this little old lady she had passed away, and that's how the car came to be. But she hardly drove it. So it was like this new car. And so it was paid for. So I put it in my name. That was my car. So that was like,
wait. What did your husband say?
He was fine with it. And he didn't know what I was thinking. And that's the thing is, once you know, you cannot let them know.
Yeah.
You have to, you're at war. And if they know anything, they will undermine everything. And I knew, well, and I had known because anytime I came to, I had learned this before I even actually knew about narcissism, is like, if there was something good that was going to happen in my life, like I wanted to do a 5K, 5K, 3K, 5K. I don't know. I wanted to do this run. And so like, I like trained. I remember being so proud of myself that I made it my first mile without stopping and all the milestones to do this goal. And he would undermine, he would say things that would make me like, you can't do this. I remember the day of the event, him getting up and like him like saying he didn't feel good or doing things. So like in my mind, I knew that if it was anything good that I wanted, I couldn't let him know that it mattered to me or anything. So when the process of leaving, you don't say you're leaving or anything, because they will do everything to undermine you. So I don't remember how I got my checking account in my name, because that also helps. Anything that you can separate and have your own is what you have to do. Yep. And I also, by running the business and by him giving me all that responsibility, because the first husband was very controlling and took care of all the money, all the accounts, paid the bills, would allot me money or yell about what I spend it on and stuff. So this one, the second one, had this whole other view of money. Like, we'll just spend it. We'll figure out how to make it later. And so like, and when I first met him, that was like so freeing, because he didn't yell at me or, control. There wasn't, money wasn't this control thing. So to me, that felt so like freeing. Mm-hmm. But also it turns out that that's really hard, because you can't save money or like the budgeting or working well together with it, or, like it was a whole other money issue. And, but he gave me all this responsibility. So in that, I would know, like when was the last possible day you can pay the electric bill before they turn it off. And I learned all these things, and I was like, I learned all these skills being married to him, that I knew that I could be better off on my own. Like if I could be fully in control of all of that. And so that gave me this, I was lucky in that way, that it gave me this confidence in being on my own over time by being in that relationship. And the way he was, I learned how to work around that. And I learned, I got confidence in that, so that I could do so that I could be on my own. So I wasn't like afraid of being on my own. Also, in 2013, he had an eye injury. So so I was already thinking about leaving, and then he injured his eye, and really, really bad, a work incident. And so he went to Florida to work with his brother. And in those months that he was gone, I saw the atmosphere in the house. Like, it was the first time that I saw the difference. And I handled everything on my own. Like, I was completely running everything on my own. And it was so much easier, because that's another fear, is you're like, how can I be a single mom? You don't realize you are a single mom, only you have this extra burden that you're taking care of as well. You are a single mom. Like, I did everything myself anyways, but actually physically running that house for 6 months on my own, that was another eye opener. That was like, we were so happy. Mealtime was just like, you want grilled cheese? Tonight, grilled cheese, like, it was so, just seeing the difference in the atmosphere really gave me that push too. So by the time I moved out, I remember getting getting the keys and getting into the apartment. And if I knew how to do cartwheels, I would have done cartwheels all over. I could care less that it was empty, that it was a 2-bedroom. It didn't matter. It was for the first time in my life, it was my space. And I'll never forget that feeling. It was like I had done it.
Yep. I can't recall that.
The kids handled it differently. They were really they were embarrassed that we lived in a tiny apartment, that we downsized, they didn't want their friends to see. Like, there was that initially, but I just kind of like I understand how you feel, and would talk with them. Like, I understand, but the important thing is the happiness, and and it took I don't remember how long. It probably took a couple months before my daughter, they would invite their friends over, and their friends were totally fine. Because it was about how we were all together. And I have a great relationship with all their friends and stuff, they love to be over. And so I think the kids seeing that, and they got over that.
Was there any initial fear moving from, because you said a bunch of positive things, which I totally appreciate, and can relate to, but I'm sure there was a little. What was the fear? Was there any sort of nervousness at all?
Well, the fear, I guess, is the unknown. You don't know, anything in life could happen. At the time, will I have enough money to make next month's bills? Or, there's always that insecurity, or that the burden that it's all on your shoulders. There isn't a safety net. My parents have both passed. I literally I don't have a safety net. It was all on my shoulders, and I had to figure it out. And there's also the fear of what he's going to do. Because in that time, there was these dramatic phone calls, and, and him causing, stuff with the kids, and just, there was there's that drama going on. And so, there is the anxiety and the fear of the unknown, but somehow it all works out, somehow. In my experience, because I work for myself, I do my own childcare business. So I could be in control of it, and it would feel things might get tight, and then somebody would call and be like, "Hey, are you available?" And I would get a few extra date nights or whatever of business, and then we'd be fine. And it just feels like it's been 6 years, and it always works out somehow. So I've learned to just kind of believe, to have faith, and believe, and when I do get really, if you get anxiety or upset, just have faith. I look backwards. I look back and at other times where I felt exactly like that, and how it worked out, like the answer showed up when I needed it or whatever. And then that kind of gives me peace, like in the moment, that it will happen. And
exactly. How much money did you save before you actually, like, did you have like a number in your head as far as like, I need 3 months rent or a year rent, or so that you knew that you would be safe for a little while? Did you do that?
no, I didn't. I don't remember how much I had in the savings. Because my plan was, as I worked with our accountant, who I took with me. So I worked with our accountant, and I knew, and I had my own account. So my plan is, and this is another thing that I like, that I feel like, I don't know about guilty, but like almost like it's wrong, because you're taught to grow up, and like you're taught in your relationship, you're honest and you work together with everything and all of that. But in that moment of fight or flight, I knew I had to save me and the kids. And like and he would undermine the money thing, like he would say, oh, I don't have the money. And because he owned his own business and the money would be feast or famine, like come in per job or whatever, it was always like that. He could say, oh, I didn't get paid yet. Could you pay for this? And he was always making me spend what little money I earned with the babysitting job first or whatever. So I had to lie, like, no, they didn't pay me yet, or this is all I have left. I had to pay this bill, or I had to literally lie my way out of that, because he would like try to undermine anything, like, and get you to spend your money, like, and it would be for like the rent or whatever. So it came down to like, I don't have the rent. It came down to us like a face off, like, well, I don't have it, and so that the year that I finally was going to get out, and I had started expanding, I put an ad on the childcare.com and got my first early morning job. And so like I had gotten my business to where I was making so much income, and I was hiding, and putting it away. And we did our taxes. It was like in the spring, and we were getting back, like $3,000 or something like that. And so I told him we still hadn't got it. And I had put it in my account. So, and I was like looking for an apartment, and he's like, how are you going to pay for this and all of that? And that's what I did. And it came down to it. I was like, oh, the tax money just showed up. That's how I'm paying for it. And I did it. But I felt bad because, you're taught not to lie. You're taught to, but that was the only way I could do it, that was my thing. It's like, I knew that chunk of money was coming, and I knew that he would take it and spend it. And I also, when I got money from the house, he took it to pay his child support, like through the whole thing. He owed me money. He took all my money and left me with credit card. He put credit cards in my name, like, which I still have. So I had to look at it as like, it was like, like a war, and like he owed me. I wasn't stealing from him. I was doing what I had to do to save myself and my kids, which I have no regrets.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing that I hear as far as really breaking or feeling as if you're breaking some sort of loyalty with that. And because as good people and caring people, which is who usually ends up with narcissists, you pride yourself on like being a good person. It's like part of your identity. So for myself, going from loyal and would do anything for you and never lied and always told the truth, to now having to be like almost as manipulative and conniving as he was, in a sense, out of survival. It's a big hit to your identity as far as what's right and what's wrong, and stepping over that line to survive, to get out, to escape. It can be heavy.
Yep, it is.
It can be heavy. And it's unfortunate that they make you they make you have to almost be, for a second, become this other person, in order to get out.
Yep.
Sucks. When you think about your life, either with number one or number two, and then you think of your life now, what are the biggest, what are the top 3 to 5 biggest differences between your life with them and your life now?
I feel like I get to be authentically myself. Like I got to learn who I was instead of seeing it through a filter of what they mirrored back and said who I was. Like getting up in the morning, like what I decide to wear, putting on makeup. Before, it was like, if I put on makeup, oh, who are you trying to impress? It was like there was always a sinister meaning behind anything that you did. If you took up exercising or whatever, like, who are you trying to impress? It wasn't them. In their minds, you're like, you're cheating or something. Like there was one of the positive things that happened the first year was I lost 20 pounds. I had no idea, without effort. It just, the happiness, people were like, you look you're glowing and everything. And I'd be like, thank you. And it wasn't that I wasn't working at it. It was just this natural result of getting out of a toxic situation.
Wow.
That happened. And one of the things is, he loved to eat. And like one of their things is like when they eat, they want you to eat, And so now I get to eat when I want to eat, what I want to eat. I get to be healthier without being judged why I'm being healthier, like I get to it's just in the atmosphere of the house, one of the things I love is I don't have to answer. I don't have to have an answer for everything that I do, or, and like just the freedom of making the littlest everyday decisions. And
I love that.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I guess, yeah.
Any issues with cooking?
No. We cook. The kids appreciate it when I cook up a big meal. They love it. And then there's other days where it's like, mom doesn't feel like cooking. Like, who's cooking tonight? Like, it's just like mealtime and it was an issue. It was just like, having dinner ready, and when they get home, and like that was like a big thing. Food was like was a thing. And now it's just relaxed, and yeah.
Okay. Yep. Mine used to actually accuse me so he'd have dinner, and then he'd have like 2 huge bowls of ice cream, or he'd have like 2 Red Bulls or something that's not good for your stomach. And then he'd have these stomach pains, and he would accuse me of poisoning the food. It was this whole thing.
Yeah.
And it made it so that it was uncomfortable to cook, because I knew that I was going to at some point get, reamed out or something. So I hated cooking. But
one of the things was like the hierarchy thing. Like one of the last, I remember I made dinner. I made this meatloaf that is amazing that I make. And so I remember that one of my older sons got up to get a second piece, and there was all this drama, like, from him, like, oh, that was the last piece. And I just remember like there being drama around dinner, like, because it was like he make sure he had like the best or the last piece of whatever, and so the kids will bring it up, because that was like one of the last like difficult, like dramatic memories. It turned into this big thing. And I think my sister was over for dinner that night too. I remember we went out, we just left the house and went to a park, and I just remember it was just a thing. And now it's like we notice the difference at mealtime. It's like isn't this stress, this like you're gonna offend him by getting a second helping before he does, or like.
And I think that's the biggest, I love hearing talk about this stuff, because a lot of times when you're in the relationship, it becomes normal,
Right.
to be the person that's putting out fires all the time and making sure everything's lined up absolutely perfectly before they get home. And it becomes so normal, and you don't realize the weight that is lifted off of your shoulders when you don't have someone like that hovering around you, 24/7 or daily. Sometimes, females are just at home, but then before they go to work and after they go to work, it's this whole thing that they have to constantly be monitoring and making sure that they're happy and they're not gonna be upset for any reason. And to go from that to where you are now, you know, the difference is just night and day. And like you said, you lost like a bunch of weight without even trying, just because everything
Yeah.
seems lighter.
Yep. I really believe that when you're unhappy and you're in a toxic environment, like it affects your health more than you think it does. And because I've seen it, I see it now. Like looking back, it's like, wow, I had no idea.
Exactly. Exactly. So if you were talking to a female who's looking to get married or dating, or maybe even is married, um, what would be some red flags in your opinion, like your circumstance? What would be some serious red flags that you would say are like definitive reasons to discontinue the relationship?
I think that if they turn, like if you can't have a conversation about a concern, or like this is bothering me and it turns into an attack on you, or it turns into like you're being over dramatic and things, I think that's a red flag that you can't talk, you can't have a conversation about conflict. I think that's one of the first things, is when you come to a conflict, that and how they react and handle it is a very important red flag. And I think the rushing things, or the I think there a lot of them, there is like the rushing the time, or if you feel like you're defending yourself or having to prove yourself, like prove that you are a good person, that you, because they're accusing you of something else, so that puts you in the like, no, I'm not. And I think if that happens a lot, that's a red flag. If you find yourself not wanting to share things because you're thinking of how their reaction is going to be or how they're going to handle it, like you could be at the grocery store and deciding on what to buy, and you hear their voice in your head, and like they're going, like it's something that you want, and you're thinking about how they're going to react to that. Like it's those simple things. That's a red flag that you're.
I totally appreciate it. Yeah. I totally agree. They're always testing you.
Right.
If you always feel like you're being tested.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. You mentioned the book earlier. What was the book?
It was Should I Stay or Should I Go? A Guide to Knowing If Your Relationship Can and Should Be Saved. That title jumped out at me because that's what I needed the answer to. It's by Lundy Bancroft. I think she writes a lot of several books on like relationships and that type of thing, but that was the one. And then once I learned about the narcissism, there's like there's different chapters of different personality disorders. So like if you're dealing with that, I guess is her advice, is like you're probably in a relationship that can't be saved because they have to admit there's a problem and do what it takes to fix it. And in a narcissist, they don't have a problem. It's always you. So
Exactly.
You
So was
can't.
that kind of like a catalyst? Was that book a big?
Oh, it was a light bulb moment when I read about narcissism, and it fit our whole relationship from the beginning to push to rushing things to, you know, like, oh, you don't want to move in, you know, it's too soon to get married. Well, then I guess you don't really care about me. You're just using me, you know, and like me thinking I'm not using you, you know, and like putting you on the defense. But, you know, first the love bombing, you know, the getting in your head, learning what your dreams are and being like, and pretending like you guys have the same goals.
Yeah. A lot of times they buy you a lot of stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know that you've mentioned watching children to save money. Was there anything else that you did to kind of like be a squirrel and like find more money to put into your savings account that you can give us some ideas for? Or is
No,
that
I mean, I've cleaned houses, but mostly I've been in childcare my whole life because it was something that could work with being like I had my own home daycare when my boys were really little. Like I've always been in childcare just because it worked with my kids and I could have both. And then I kind of with the second husband, I like cleaned houses on the side while also running the business just because I kind of had fallen into that. And so I kept those clients and would squirrel that money away just to have my own money. It wasn't because I was like trying to leave. It was just having access to my own spending money was a very difficult thing because he just, you know, it was like I work, I make the money, I kind of a thing. So, but mostly childcare. When I moved here, it was like when I moved up here, I was still like helping with the business and stuff. And I was at home with my kids and like a neighbor asked like, hey, you know, I noticed you're home with your kids. Would you mind watching my daughter? And I kind of fell into, and because I've always been like in a kind of a daycare situation, multi kids at one time. And this was like she just kind of blended in with my kids. And I was like, and I, you know, the extra $200 a week. And I was like, wow, this is easy. So then she moved, like, I want to do this. So then I found my family that I was with them their whole childhood, like 11 years till the last one went to first grade. So, so I became very attached to that family. So then I worked out to move out on my own. I couldn't support myself just working with them. So that's when I did the before. I was like, well, I'm just going to get into childcare. And that's another point is not having, like, I didn't have a college education. I didn't have this career that could make money. So there was that insecurity of how, and I was like, I just babysit. And so like, I thought like college kids babysit, like this isn't, you know, there was that insecurity in that, like how, like nobody's going to hire me. Like they prefer, you know, they're a college kid or whatever, that's who they're going to ask. So like, how am I going to like get date nights or get more hours to work around this one family, which my goal was to stick with them. And I think working with them, it made me those few years, I forget how many years I was with them, like 3 or 4, I think, before I left. In that time of working just with that one family, I built up this confidence. I saw the gift that I had with the kids and that I was giving the parents. And then when I started doing date nights, I would get feedback of like, it's so much to have a mature, like a mom watch the kids. Like we can go out and we don't worry about them at all. Like, whereas a college kid, you know, will call over every little thing, you know, like they don't have that confidence. And like, that feedback gave me this confidence that, you know what, I'm not just a babysitter. I'm providing like peace of mind to these parents, you know, with all my experience and knowing how to handle all the little things and just becoming a team. I know how to be a team with the mom in raising the kids, you know, like, because I am a mom and I have these sensitivities on, you know, that, and like building that confidence and realizing that what I have is a gift and it is a career. It is important. Gave me the confidence to go out on my own. And so, yeah, I guess like that was an important thing too, was realizing that what I do for work is important and then making it a career.
Yeah. And I love this story because when in my circumstance, I tried babysitting when I knew I was leaving, I was trying every way possible to get out and
Yep.
to save money. I was just trying to save money all the time in any way possible. And I tried babysitting, and my ex forbid me. He would go into a complete rage over anything possible that he could figure out in order to not let me. Like, he'd complain about the floors not being washed. Like, you're not even taking care of the floors, even though there was nothing wrong with the floors. There was like a speck of dust on the floor. And it would turn into this whole thing and guilt me into my priorities need to be at the home. I shouldn't be. And he used to call it a college job. That's what he used to say. He'd demean it and he'd say, you're, however old I was at the time, blah, blah, years old. That's for a college girl. Like, you're stealing money from another college girl by doing that. So I love that you're saying this, because a lot of times females feel, or individuals in these circumstances feel like they try one thing, like babysitting, for instance, it doesn't work. And then they're like, oh, if I can't make money babysitting, then there's no other way. So my story is I opened up an eBay store and an OfferUp store. And at night, while he was watching TV, because he, like I said, he'd keep me up until 3 or 4 in the morning. So I would, since I knew I was going to be up anyways, and he had the TV blaring, I would be in the office secretly taking pictures of my dresses and my clothes. And I had also wanted more kids. So I had kept all of my son's clothes, and I would secretly take pictures of maybe like 12 to 20 different pairs of clothing just quickly on my phone. And then I would sit during the day and I would list them on eBay and OfferUp to make money. And this is just a really great example of, you have to find out what your spouse will allow you to do, because they're all different. Your
Right.
spouse has absolutely no problem with you running his business and then also doing a couple of other things in order to make money. You just have to figure out what it is they feel comfortable with you doing.
Yeah.
Of course, my ex did find out that I was selling on eBay, but I minimized it. I was like, oh yeah, I sold this, he'd see a package. He'd be like, what is that? And I'd be like, oh, I sold this shirt for $2, even though it was like $20 or $22 or whatever it was. But just, you have to maneuver to figure out what they're comfortable with, and don't give up, find clean houses. Figure out what they're comfortable with, minimize the amount of money that you're making, and, go at it full force.
Yep.
So I love that. What are some things that you wish maybe people who don't know much about narcissism, what do you wish they did know? Like, for instance, when you're talking to friends or somebody who's in a narcissistic relationship but doesn't know they're in a narcissistic relationship, what's like one or two things that you wish people would understand about it?
I guess that it's I wish that I think now more people are hearing about it. Like, it is becoming more talked about, and there's so many books and stuff about it. But yeah, I wish the more people that knew and were educated about it, they could help each other and see. And like, when somebody's talking about it, because more of us are educated and stuff about it, we can be the support, the emotional support. Because I think it's feeling isolated and not understanding what's really going on. But you're in this situation and you think you're the crazy one, and you think you're the one who's overreacting, and you feel that no one will understand you. I think that's so easy to be isolated, because a lot of people don't. And even women aren't there for each other. They're quick to be like, oh, you're so lucky, look at what you have, and be focused on the materialistic things, and kind of like feel that you're being ungrateful or unhappy, and not like really seeing, the the truth that's there, and just like really listening to each other and giving ourselves the benefit of the doubt that there is something going on. There is something, dark that, yeah, and just being there for each other. Cause that was the hardest part, is feeling that nobody else sees it. And so maybe I am the crazy one. Maybe, and that was another thing. If you try to resolve something, like he would throw in my face, well, you grew up with this abusive, controlling dad, so you have these issues, like you want to see bad in me or whatever, because of how you were raised, or it was your first husband, he ruined you, and like those were excuses, and like you do think that, you think there is probably truth to it. I did come from a difficult childhood. I had a controlling, dad, and so yeah.
Yeah. And I think the biggest one is just that it is abuse. A lot of times people view abuse as being hit. And a lot of times this mental and emotional turmoil that we go through is, just as traumatic as, being physically abused. And the trauma that happens afterwards. I don't know about you, but I mean, there's circumstances every week that I go through where I'm being triggered by something that somebody is saying, where I'm just overwhelmed with so much anxiety because that one word verbiage, or that one way that he said it, or the tone, triggers a response that used to mean something else. And, healing from that can be really heavy. Where would you say is your healing process, as far as, a lot of times women believe they're never going to get over it. Where are you as far as healing goes?
I think I've come a long ways in the healing thing. I think journaling, even in the end, when you're in the relationship, journaling, because when you go back and read like that situation, it helps you see it from an outside perspective. And I think when you're outside of it, getting that outside, the longer you're out of it, you get that outside perspective and you can see it so much more clearly. And I think the reading and educating yourself on everything, on the narcissism, on everything, on relationships. Like I just read things on relationships and stuff. I think the more education I got, like I got to the point where like some of my oldest sons or whatever are like, Mom, like that's enough. And and I'm like, no, because the education is what protects you, like, and it gives you the confidence to see the red flags. Like, it's not like I'm like, okay, I'm over this, so I don't need to read about this or learn any more about it, And I've been able to help some other friends through it. Like I passed on those books to it was a guy friend, and he was going through a divorce, and he like had reached out to me just randomly, like, oh, I see we're in the same situation. And I was like, no, we're not. I'm happy, because he was struggling. Like it was like the worst thing that ever happened to him. But in my situation, like getting out was like this goal, like, because I saw the truth and I did what I had to get out. And it was a happy thing. I didn't have guilt anymore or anything like that. So I passed on these books, and it opened, he read them and his mom read them. And it turns out she was highly a narcissist, and like it opened his eyes, and to see how that helped, and like we kind of like, and I was just there for him and helped him through that, and just like helping other people just gave me this fire. Like if my story, what I went through, can help one other person, then it was worth it. It was worth it to go through, because like also hearing other people's stories is what helped me see and keep fueling and giving me hope and the strength to go on when things get, when you just feel like you can't go another step, and it was just like, I think that really helps. And I think the journaling, they keep educating yourself, the being able to find ways to give back and help with your story, I think really helps. And then, and then also, eventually you're going to get back out there and start dating again. And the more you, and in those situations, you see the red flags sooner and sooner, which builds up your confidence, because it lessens the fear. Because there is that thing, you leave and you think they're all bad, like there isn't, there's no true love out there, or, like this doesn't even exist, or, there's, and you kind of like put yourself in this bubble of protection. But I think that you have to, by educating yourself, it gives you the confidence to go out there. And the more times that you see the red flags and realize, and you can see it, nope, this is where that's going, it builds that confidence in you, and so that you can just be happy in in yourself, and getting to know yourself. And also learning to fill up the space, because when you leave a situation, like all of a sudden you're on your own, you end up having a lot more time to fill and stuff. So I remember being on my own in the apartment and stuff. I had the kids, which we still have our routine, but we still had to come up with a different routine, like a new routine. And also, like I would like, I remember finding like a crazy show that he would have thought was so stupid that I would watch every night, like that would be my thing. Or, like I went through this craze where I read like over 100 books in a year. Like I love to read. That was like, and reading was my saving grace through a lot of difficult times. That was my escape. So just, just doing things that were like, that you couldn't do before, because there would have been a reaction, like watching the silly show in it, or whatever, and creating a different routine and getting to know yourself is what is all part of your healing and helpful.
I love that. My next question was going to be, what are some things that you're enjoying now that you're free? But you just mentioned a whole bunch. Is there any other ones that stand out to you that you do? Now that you don't have somebody asking you what you're doing all the time?
Well, we love to go camping. So I remember I slowly got all the gear and things over the years, and we just do that more. And so one of the things is we went to Maine, and that was our big camping trip. We ended up, and I kind of just chose it randomly on the map, where do we want to go? I want to go to Maine. What are the parks there? And I ended up in Acadia, which is amazing. If you've never been, you have to go in Acadia. It is the most beautiful park in the world, like the big cliffs and the ocean, and it has just a little bit of everything there. But just making that dream come true, which was a childhood dream, was to visit Maine, was huge, all on my own, and just doing things with the kids. We love to go on adventures, and just randomly, let's go. Where are we going?
I love that. Any other trips?
Well, this summer we're going to stick with, I went to France. My sister got married in France. So that was the first time we got to go across the ocean. And I remember being really nervous about that. And I'm a little claustrophobic. So the thought of sitting on a plane for that long was and it turned out to be the best adventure ever.
Wow. I've still never done that. I've never been out of the country.
Yeah, I was so nervous about it, and it was such an amazing experience. And Ashlyn and I, for her, when she graduated, it was supposed to be last summer, we wanted to do Italy and go over to Italy and tour it, but then COVID happened, so that kind of stopped all of that. But yeah, it was a really neat experience. So I decided that we'll just travel and explore around here and the different parks, and just
I love that. It must be such just knowing yourself as a mom and realizing, your children may not realizing, but you knowing deep down inside that their future and their mindset and their emotional and mental capacities have been altered for the better so much, by you taking that leap and believing in yourself and
I
stepping out.
see it in them, because that's your fear also as a mom, is that you're going to ruin your kids, or
Yeah.
by breaking up their family, or like you know, you're raised with, they have to have a father and a mother and all, and even when you're in that relationship, it's not teamwork. He's working against you a lot of the time, and you are on your own raising your kids, but through this difficult thing. So when you get to be yourself and be at peace, and in this more relaxed, happy environment and everything, they see that, they take that in, and to see them go from like kind of like being worried and scared and like with the big change of moving to just being happy in school, and you watch for all those signals, like how they're doing in school and how they are with their friends and all of, you know, you're constantly looking for like a warning signs that like they're not happy or something. And to see them grow and be happy, and like I recently like changed my name back to my maiden name, which was something that I wanted to do, and I kept the married name because it was the same as the kids, and I thought it would be easier with school. But there was this part of me that wanted, you know, my identity back, like my name. And I asked them, I asked both the kids, the youngest ones, I was like, you know, how would you feel about that? And they're 100% support for it. Just shows me how healthy they are through this whole thing, that I made the right decision, and they totally support me. And getting out was like the right decision. Like,
yeah. And I would like to remind the audience or whoever's listening now that you came from a religious background.
yeah.
So a lot of times what holds women where they are is religion. Religion a lot of times controls, and a lot of times the husbands use that, your faith, against you. So even despite that, you know, being able to still stand on your own and in your power and what you felt was correct for your future and your children's future, you still stepped out and did what was best, and you can see it tenfold. I can see it in your demeanor, your zest for life, the anxiety that was lifted up, the weight that you lost. It was better.
Yeah.
You know, it was the correct decision.
Yep.
I love that. I love absolutely everything about that. And this was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I like to do a lightning round of just 5 obscure questions to kind of lighten the mood a little bit. Do you mind?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So what is your favorite fruit to eat on a summer day?
A watermelon. I'm already
Yes. That's my favorite too. Where was your first kiss?
I was like 14 and a half, and we were camping. It was this boy I was crushing on. It was like a week of camp, and like it was in a pool. I remember he kissed me, and it was like he had a crush on me, and I just remember that was the first feeling, like, oh.
I love it. What was his name? What was his name?
Corey.
Corey.
He wore braces.
In the game of truth or dare, do you usually pick truth or dare?
I usually pick truth because I'm not afraid of truth, but the dares can be crazy.
Favorite pet growing up? What was your favorite pet?
A ferret. His name was Chucky, and we were inseparable. And I just recently was randomly in a pet store and adopted a ferret. He it was like the craziest thing, and it's been the best thing.
Seriously, I see your pictures on Facebook. I always wanted a ferret growing up. My parents refused to buy me a ferret. So I'm living vicariously through.
I made his own post on Instagram, which is totally nuts, but it's already got like over 250 followers. And because I love taking pictures of him and his antics. And it was funny. My sister called me the other night, and she was like feeling like down and stuff. And like Cosmo, I named him Cosmo because it felt like cosmic, how we we met. And he was like dancing around and all that. And I'm like, everybody needs a ferret because you cannot be sad when they're around. They're just like pure joy.
What's your ferret's Instagram?
It's called Cosmos Capers.
Cosmos Capers.
Yeah.
So if I go to Cosmos Capers, I can just see your ferret whenever I want.
Yeah, you can friend him, follow him.
I love that. What is your best childhood memory?
I think it was that was a hard one. And I think it was I think I was 15. The summer I was 15, my parents, we did a cross country from Florida to California. We took the South States and came back more north and did this whole like 2-week road trip. And I got to see the Grand Canyon and like Hollywood Boulevard and the great redwoods, and just like having that experience was just amazing. And it was one of the happiest, like times of our life. It was a big adventure. It probably started the adventure bug. It's never left me. But yeah, I got to see a lot of places. And as I've met people, I realized a lot of people didn't get that experience. So I feel really lucky that I got to travel that summer and see so much in one summer.
Exactly. I love that. So I like to kind of end on a word of advice. And I feel like you're the best person to ask this to, because listening to your story of your second marriage and you knowing within like a few days of getting married that you may have picked a bad one. But then sticking with it, staying in it and working towards trying to make it work. What would be your advice for a woman who's married, children? How do you make it day to day? Mentally, emotionally? What are some of the things you had to do in order to, move through until you were able to get out?
I think I guess the learning the skills of like the gray rock, like not getting pulled into confrontations or whatever, kind of learning to be the more neutral and through, like when they would start drama or whatever. I guess personally, like mentally, and it's a gift, I guess, that I would look for the positives, like I would look for the positives and the things to be grateful in the day instead of like focusing on the negative. And that's just something I learned in my childhood too, because I don't like to be sad and upset and anxious. So like learning those self-soothing things. And when I do get anxious, one of my things is to read or to like, to escape in a book or journaling, writing out the feelings it was something that helped, get them out. So I guess learning like those healthy things that you can do will help you get through the difficult, time. Yeah. And also the journaling helped me to also going back and reading it helped me to see it.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a huge one for me because they have you
questioning yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. Where you would insist that they had done that before multiple times, and they would insist that you're crazy and you've never done it. So going back and reading it and like reaffirming that you're not crazy, even if they don't believe you, but just knowing within yourself. And then when you see the consistency of it over and over and over and over again throughout the journaling, that was a huge one that I used. And when I say journaling, I don't know how you did it, but I would literally just do a page. It would just be a page, and I would highlight the arguments. That was my opinion. And that made it so that I did it for that purpose though.
Yeah.
I would put the date and then I would put the 1, 2, 10 arguments, whatever happened. That way when I went back, all I saw was the negatives. And that really helped me stand strong because when you're being love bombed, sometimes you're like, oh, actually everything's fine.
Yes.
Actually, everything's good. I don't even know why I'm freaking out like this. Everything's perfect. And then they have you in this roller coaster. So when the love bombing started to happen is when I would read my journal. So like when things were good is actually when I would read my journal in order to keep me refocused on saving. Because that's how they get you away from trying to escape is by love bombing. So you're like, oh, everything's fine. So you like stop saving, you start spending again. And I started seeing this consistency where I would give up my dream of leaving, start spending normal, and then I'd be right back down in the ditch again. And I'd be right back where my money was. So I had to figure out, you're almost like tricking yourself. You almost have to like know what's going on deep down and like figure out a way to keep you focused or to trick yourself back into.
Well, that's the educating part. Like, so in the end, that's what I did too, was write down the just the negative stories as reaffirmation of what of the truth. But seeing that and the narcissism and realizing the roller coaster thing and the cycle, like educating yourself on the cycle, it makes you immune to the cycle, to their tricks. When you see it as these are all their tricks, this is how they operate. This is, the love bombing is the love bombing. It's a manipulation. When you see the manipulation, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
So the educating yourself is so key. Like the more you learn their techniques and the more you see it changes. It helps me to disconnect because there is that love connection and it's really hard for you to accept this person thinks different. They don't love you. They don't know, but they don't love anybody. They don't know how to love. That's missing. And it's so hard as a person who believes in love and who loves with all her heart and has empathy and all of that to realize they don't have it. It was a huge thing to accept.
Yep.
But once you accept it and you realize that everything that they're doing is to undermine you and manipulate and to keep you where they want you and control and stuff, then you can stick to your guns and you have to put yourself first. It's you against them. You're saving yourself from something, but you have to accept that truth before you can actually do it. Make the steps to protect yourself and resist their techniques.
That's what it is. Yeah. That's
because it's worked for them. It's worked for them with you. The one thing that he did not believe for an instant that I would go anywhere. He was completely, and that worked to my advantage because he did not believe for an instant. He didn't think I could make money to support myself. He didn't think I would get up early for that job. He laughed at the first job. That's probably why he didn't say, no, you can't do it. Because he's like, this is going to last, a week. And because she's not a morning person. She hates getting up at 5. And I just continuously proved him wrong. And I think it kind of kept him off balance.
Got it. I love that. I love your story so much. Thank you so much for coming on here and taking the time to share it. Is there anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. I just listen to your gut. If you're like in a relationship and you just have your gut is telling you something feels off, something's not right, and don't listen to the words, look at the actions. That I think the girl yesterday said that, just don't, the words and the actions don't match when it comes to them. And so once you see that also really helps.
100%. 100%. So I am going to close up here, my friends. Thank you so much for those of you that are listening now. And thank you so much for those of you that did. We really appreciate opening people's eyes and opening people's ears to narcissism and what it is and what it looks like. And, I know that I run into females consistently who are in relationships like this and don't even know they're in relationships like this. So we're just trying to spread the word, and we're trying to let individuals know that it isn't always your fault. Sometimes you are realistically with an individual who doesn't have the capacity to be able to feel and doesn't have empathy. So thank you so much for joining us here on Her Version. We'll be back again soon, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.